Some men become champions. Some become superstars. But only a select few earn something every fighter understands: respect. For nearly 20 years, Darren the Damage Elkins turned pain into purpose and impossible comebacks into unforgettable UFC moments. Now, one of the UFC's toughest warriors makes the final walk of his career against Yadier Valle. Will the Damage leave the Octagon with one last victory, or will the next generation close the final chapter? Watch the full breakdown right now, only on Knuckle Game Podcast, where we don't chase headlines, we chase understanding. Let's get it. What's going on, everybody? I'm El Benga, and welcome back to Knuckle Game Podcast, where we don't chase headlines, we chase understanding. If this is your first time here, hit the subscribe button, join the family, and become part of one of the fastest growing communities of real fight fans on YouTube. Around here, we don't just tell you who won, we tell you why it happened and what happens next. Today's episode is brought to you by Juggernaut Provisions, the home of Juggernaut Snacks Knuckle Sandwich, the official snack for fight fans. When you're watching warriors leave everything inside the cage, make sure you've got a snack that's built for champions. Now, let's talk about a man who never needed a championship belt to become unforgettable. The last of a dying breed. You know what bothers me about sports today? Everybody wants to be famous. Everybody wants followers. Everybody wants a podcast, a clothing line, a whiskey company. Somebody's trying to sell you protein powder before they ever defend a title. And look, I ain't mad at it. Secure the bag. But every generation has a handful of athletes who remind us why we fell in love with this sport in the first place. Darren Elkins is one of those guys. If you're new to MMA, you might pull up his record and say, oh, he's lost quite a few fights. And that's exactly how people miss the point. Because Darren Elkins was never measured by perfection. He was measured by persistence. His career was never about falling. It was about getting back up. Again and again and again. That's why his name isn't the highlight. It isn't the assassin. It isn't the destroyer. It's the damage. Because every fight looked like somebody tried to remodel his face with a baseball bat. Now, some fighters leave the cage looking like they just finished a yoga class. Hair still perfect, no scratches, no swelling. Not Darren Elkins. This man looked like he'd been in a 5-round argument with a grizzly bear. His forehead leaking, his eyes swollen, blood everywhere. And somehow, he was the guy moving forward. That's insanity. You know what's crazy? Every time you thought this has to be the fight where age finally catches him, he'd remind everybody why experience still matters. He wasn't faster. He wasn't stronger. He wasn't more explosive. He just refused to quit. You can't teach that. You can't buy that. You can't download that. Some people are simply wired differently. Darren Elkins was built like that, built from different material. Now, before there was the damage, long before UFC fans knew his name, Darren Elkins was just another wrestler from Indiana chasing an impossible dream. No massive NIL deal, no $1 million sponsorships, no social media fame, just wrestling. Long practices, and the kind of work nobody posts online. Because let's be honest, grinding isn't glamorous. Nobody puts conditioning drills on Instagram. Nobody gets millions of views for waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to run hills. Success usually looks boring before everybody calls it legendary. That wrestling background became the foundation of everything Darren Elkins would become. Pressure, conditioning, mental toughness, relentless pace. If you've watched him fight, you knew exactly what was coming. He's going to shoot, he's going to clinch, he's going to drag you into deep water. He's going to make this ugly. He's going to make you work every second. Everybody knew the game plan. Stopping it was a completely different conversation. That's one of the funniest things about MMA. Fans always say, why doesn't he just stop the takedown? Like it's that easy. If wrestling was easy, every heavyweight would move like Khabib. Elkins wasn't flashy. He was efficient. He understood something a lot of fighters never learn. You don't have to win every exchange. You only have to keep making your opponent work. And after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes 25, that work starts to collect interest. That's when guys begin breathing through their mouth. Hands start to drop, shots get slower, decision-making gets worse. That's where Darren Elkins lived. Most fighters panic when things get difficult. Elkins almost looks comfortable, more comfortable. It's like adversity woke something up inside of him. The worse things got, the more dangerous he became. That's a terrifying trait because there's no game plan for somebody who actually enjoys suffering. Darren Elkins' career was never about highlights. Let's keep it real. I'm gonna keep it tall. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. If your entire MMA education comes from TikTok, you probably missed Darren Elkins completely. He wasn't chasing viral knockouts. He wasn't cutting WWE promos. He wasn't getting into Twitter beefs every Tuesday afternoon. He just kept showing up year after year after year. Think about how hard that actually is. The UFC isn't the NBA. You don't play 82 games. Every fight comes with the responsibility that your career changes forever. One bad injury, one bad weight cut, one bad night, and everything you've worked for can disappear. Yet somehow, Darren Elkins kept surviving generation after generation. He fought as the sport evolved. He watched legends retire. He watched prospects become champions. He watched champions become commentators. And somehow, the damage was still there. Still walking into the octagon. Still giving fans everything he had. There's something beautiful about that. Because not every great career ends with a championship belt. Some careers end with something even rarer. The respect of their peers. And if you ask fighters around the UFC who the toughest men they've ever shared the cage with are, Darren Elkins' name comes up far more often than casual fans realize. Because fighters know something that fans sometimes forget. Winning is impressive, but surviving nearly 2 decades in the toughest organization on earth is legendary. The fight that defined Darren as a legend. You can measure a fighter's career a lot of different ways. Championship belts, performance bonuses, paychecks, Hall of Fame speeches. But every now and then, a fighter has one moment, one fight that tells you everything you need to know about who they are. For Darren Elkins, That moment came against Mirsad Bektik. And if you've never seen that fight, stop what you're doing after this episode and watch it. Trust me. You can measure a fighter's career a lot of different ways. Championship belts, performance bonuses, paychecks, Hall of Fame speeches. But every now and then, a fighter has one moment, one fight that tells you everything you need to know about who they are. For Darren Elkins, that moment came against Mirsad Bektik. And if you've never seen that fight, stop what you're doing after this episode and watch it. Not because it's the greatest technical performance you'll ever see, but because it's one of the greatest examples of heart this sport has ever witnessed. Coming into that fight, Bektik looked like the future. Young, explosive, athletic, fast. People were talking about him like he was the next best thing at featherweight. Meanwhile, Darren Elkins was viewed by a lot of people as the veteran gatekeeper, the guy who gives prospects their toughest tests. And for almost 2 rounds, it looked exactly like that. Bektik was piecing Elkins up, landing combinations, winning scrambles, hurting him on the feet. Every minute that passed, it looked more and more like the old veteran had finally run into Father Time. Then something happened, not physically, but mentally. You could almost see Darren Elkins made the decision that if I'm going out, you're coming with me. That's not technique, man. That's not athleticism. That's something deeper. That's an inner conviction. He started walking through punches. He started forcing ugly exchanges. He turned the fight into chaos. And chaos is where Darren Elkins made his home. Now, suddenly the younger fighter started slowing down. His punches didn't have that same pop, that same snap. His footwork wasn't as clean. His confidence started to leak away. You could see it. And Darren Elkins, covered in blood, face completely busted up, just kept coming forward, forward, forward. Then it happened. Late in the 3rd round, Elkins swarmed him. And with the head kick, shut Bektik's lights off, forcing the stoppage. And completed one of the greatest comebacks. I mean, this was one of the greatest comeback victories in UFC history. That wasn't just a win. That fight became Darren Elkins, his stamp. Every time fans hear the damage, that's the picture they see. Blood everywhere, broken face, refuses to lose. You know something casual fans don't always understand? Fighters judge greatness differently than fans do. Fans love knockouts. Fighters respect toughness. Fans remember champions. Fighters remember the guy who made them question themselves. Because when another professional fighter tells you that dude is different, that means something. You hear names like Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, Jim Miller, Matt Brown, Donald Cerrone. These are fighters who built careers on showing up every single time, whether they won or lost, whether they were favorites or underdogs, whether they got cut or knocked down. They never cheated the fans. Darren Elkins belongs in that conversation. Maybe he wasn't the biggest superstar. Maybe he never headlined Madison Square Garden. Maybe he never wrapped UFC gold around his waist. But every single time you bought a ticket, you knew exactly what you were getting. Maximum effort, no shortcuts, no excuses, no quitting. You can't fake that. You either have that fire or you don't. You know what I love most about fighters like Darren Elkins? They remind us why records don't tell the whole story. You ever hear somebody say, oh, he only won this many fights, or he lost too much? That's because some people only know how to read statistics. Fight fans, real fight fans, read stories. Darren Elkins gave us one hell of a story. Now, let's talk about the man standing across the cage Saturday night. Yadier Del Valle. This is a completely different moment in his career. While Darren Elkins is preparing to say goodbye, Yadier Del Valle is trying to introduce himself to the UFC world. That's the business. Somebody's last fight is somebody else's first opportunity. Del Valle is younger, he's fresher, he's explosive. And this is exactly the kind of matchup young fighters dream about. Beat a respected veteran, and suddenly everybody knows your name. But here's the problem. Retirement fights can be weird. Sometimes the veteran looks every bit his age. The speed is gone, the reaction time isn't there, the mouths finally show up, and the younger fighter cruises. But every once in a while, the veteran gives us one last reminder, one last masterpiece, one last war, one last memory. That's why retirement fights are so emotional, because nobody knows which version we're about to get. Will Father Time finally cash the check, or will Darren Elkins dig down one last time and remind us why they call him the Damage? Let's break this thing down. If you're Yadier Del Valle, you do not want to fight or want this fight turning into a 15-minute dogfight. Now, you don't want that. You want speed, distance, sharp combinations, clean exits, touch Darren, move, make him reset, make him chase. Do not let him turn this into warfare in the trench, because that's exactly where Darren Elkins has made his living for almost 20 years. For Elkins, the blueprint hasn't changed. Pressure, pressure, more pressure, clinch, wrestle, scramble, lean on him, force him to carry your weight, drag him into the second half of the fight. Because Elkins knows something young fighters don't always appreciate. The fight really starts when both guys are exhausted. And if this thing gets ugly, if there's blood, if there's chaos, if both men have to start making decisions while they're tired, don't be surprised if Darren Elkins starts smiling. Because ugly fights have always been beautiful to the Damage. One last walk. You know, there's something different about retirement fights. This isn't just another name on the schedule. This isn't just another paycheck. This isn't just another training camp. This is the last time, the last weight cut, the last walk through the hotel lobby with your headphones on, the last time your coaches wrap up your hands, the last time Bruce Buffer calls your name, the last time that Octagon closes behind you. Think about that. For almost 20 years, your entire life has revolved around preparing for one thing: walking into a cage. Knowing another trained fighter is trying to separate you from consciousness. Then one day, it's over. No more fight week, No more media day, no more game plans, no more hearing your music echo through the arena. That's just not the end of a career. That's the end of an identity. People always ask, why don't fighters retire sooner? Because fighting isn't just what they do. For guys like Darren Elkins, it's who they are. When you've lived this life for decades, walking away is harder than walking in. That's why I respect retirement fights, win or lose. There's courage in knowing it's time. Now, what this win means and what a loss means. If Darren Elkins wins Saturday night, what a story. He rides off into the sunset with his hands raised, one last victory, one last roar from the crowd, one last reminder that heart can still overcome youth. There's something poetic about that. No, it doesn't erase every loss. No, it doesn't suddenly make him a world champion. But it gives a warrior the ending every fighter dreams about. Leaving on your terms, walking away instead of being pushed away. Now, if Yadier Del Valle wins, that doesn't make him the villain. That's the fight business. Every generation eventually passes the torch. The young lion doesn't ask permission, he takes it. That's exactly what every great champion before him had to do. The legends all beat legends. John Jones beat Shogun. George St. Pierre beat Matt Hughes. Khabib took the throne from the generation before him. That's how this sport survives. So don't boo Yadier Del Valle if he spoils the farewell. Respect him, because he's doing exactly what Darren Elkins once had to do himself. That's the circle of MMA. That's the food chain. Now, my official predictions. You already know how we do this. We don't make predictions based on emotions. We don't make predictions based on who we like. We watch the film, we study the styles, we look at the trends, then make the call. My heart wants Darren Elkins to leave with this one final victory. Every fight fan loves a Hollywood ending, but this sport doesn't always read the script. Father Time is undefeated. He's taken champions. He's taken legends. He's taken Hall of Famers. Eventually, he comes for everybody. Yadier Del Valle is younger, faster, less worn down. He's entering the UFC with something to prove, and that's dangerous. I think Darren Elkins has moments. I think he lands takedowns. I think he makes this fight uncomfortable. I think he reminds everybody exactly why he's earned so much respect. But over 15 minutes, youth starts taking over. My official prediction, Yadier Del Valle by unanimous decision. But if Darren Elkins somehow drags this fight into deep water, if he turns it into chaos, if he forces Del Valle into a war, don't act surprised if the damage gives us one last miracle. Because if 20 years has taught us anything, it's this. Never count out Darren Elkins. So let's talk about his legacy. Because you know what's funny? 20 years from now, some fan is going to ask, Dad, Who was Darren Elkins? And I hope somebody answers like this. He wasn't the biggest star. He wasn't the richest fighter. He wasn't the loudest personality. He wasn't even a champion. He was something rare. He was honest. Every single time he walked into that octagon, he gave you every ounce of him. No shortcuts, no excuses, no looking for a way out. Just work, heart, pain, and unbelievable determination. There are Hall of Fame careers built on championships. There are Hall of Fame careers built on moments. Darren Elkins built his reputation on character. That's harder because belts eventually collect dust. Character lives forever. When fans talk about fighters who represented everything good about mixed martial arts, the damage deserves to be in that conversation. Not because he was perfect, but because he was real. Because he reminded us that greatness isn't always measured by gold. Sometimes greatness is measured by how much of yourself you're willing to leave inside the cage. And Darren Elkins left just about everything. As fans, we're always chasing the next superstar, the next champion, the next viral knockout. But before we do, let's take a second to appreciate the fighters who built this sport, the men and women who made it possible for today's stars to stand under those bright lights. Darren Elkins, thank you. Thank you for the wars. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for showing every young fighter that talent can win fights, but heart can build legacies. Congratulations on an incredible career, and whatever comes next, you've already earned the respect of this sport forever. If you've liked this breakdown, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to Knuckle Game Podcast, and let me know in the comments, what's your favorite Darren Elkins moment? And does the damage belong in the Hall of Fame? A huge thanks to you and our sponsor, Juggernaut Provisions, creators of the Juggernaut Snacks Knuckle Sandwich. As always, keep your hands up, your chin tucked. Until next time, I'm El Banger. Thanks for watching Knuckle Game Podcast. Peace.